Uh, Good evening, everybody that's out in Bishkek. Good afternoon. Today we did something a little special by changing up our um, lunch and learn hour to, I guess, a little bit more of a high tea or pre-dinner and learn. So thanks for tuning in. My name is Carlos Iniguez. I'm a program and content director at Venture Hive, located out in Miami in the United States. And we are working alongside Peak Bishkek uh, in order to continue to help the program as a whole to grow and scale out throughout Kyrgyzstan. And today, as a continuation of our Lunch and Learn series, we're inviting Sergio Manquita to be able to present to our community. Sergio is an expert in marketing with over 15 years of experience in some interesting niches within uh, the marketing discipline, but with a master's from Thunderbird, and if I'm not mistaken, a bachelor's from UCLA. Sergio is a multicultural marketer and has a lot of different experiences with various sectors, including food and beverage, financial services, healthcare, a lot of B2C work and B2B work as well. Besides that, Sergio just happens to be, and as I think you'll find out quickly on the call, just a really nice guy too, super approachable and accessible. And he's definitely somebody I think that's a good contact and reference point when it comes to this area, especially as it comes around the topic of connecting your dots, which is to hone your marketing toolbox. So let Sergio today be your secret weapon in that work. Sergio, welcome to Lunch and Learn.
Thank you so much, Carlos, for the kind invitation, and Susan as well for allowing me to spend some time with this great community, this bunch of entrepreneurs in Kyrgyzstan in the CIS area. Whether you're having tea, I've already had my 2 cups. It's early here in Miami. What we're going to be doing today is I'm going to be helping you in talking about one of my favorite topics, which is marketing. And today I'm going to be helping you look at marketing from different perspectives, but really to connect those dots, right? To really get a sense of how do you grow your venture, how do you go about doing it, and really putting together something in an integrated fashion, making sure that it's unique and authentic to your voice. So what we're going to be doing in this workshop, we're going to be mixing theory. I'm going to be giving you some practical examples of what have you, and I'm going to show you different ways to do things. And this is all applicable to all of your ventures, whether they're business to consumer or business to business. I realize that many of you are in different stages. Some of you are at idea stage, others are a little bit more progressive along there. And so it's in keeping with that that I would like that we'll do that. I'll probably do the presentation for about 35, 40 minutes or so, and then we do have time to take some questions afterwards. So you can definitely hang on to those. Before I get started, just want to make sure that on your screen, you see the connecting the dots. Everything is looking good that way, Carlos?
Yeah, it looks good.
Okay, perfect. So let's get started. Okay, so what are we going to be talking about today? This is just a general idea. We're going to be taking a look at the marketing landscape and the communications landscape of what's going on. We're going to be talking about marketing strategy and really digging deeper into the 4 Ps, which is really now the 4 Cs. So stay tuned for that. We'll talk a lot about market research and consumer insights. This is the bedrock to be able to put forth your entire marketing and communications architecture. You got to start from that. Those are the building blocks. Some practical tips on how to market your business online. Also, when it's appropriate, how to go ahead and start scaling your marketing efforts. Uh, and then going to market, there's some examples about that, how to start thinking about allocating your budget, and then some concluding thoughts. We talk and we discuss all of these natures, the most important and salient thing with your marketing hat, if you will, with your marketing toolbox is you always want to be thinking about what am I doing and how am I doing it to be able to create value, right? It's in creating that value to your end user, to your customer, that's really what makes the difference and what differentiates you from all the other options, from all your other competitors. Okay, so I don't have to tell you that growing a business isn't easy, right? First and foremost, um, you need an idea, then you need to discover a niche, then you start refining a target demographic, and you need to figure out what you're going to add to them, what value you're going to sell to them. Okay. Again, so whether it's a product or a service, getting the word out is getting harder and harder, right? And without those right marketing strategies to fuel that growth, okay, turning a profit really becomes challenging. So many of you are probably wondering, how do you get your message to the right audience and do it so effectively, right? How do you boost your visibility, your awareness, and increase the sales while sustaining a profit and having a great offer, right? So today we live in a very fragmented, cluttered, some would even say disoriented world, right? Our attention is being pulled from multiple areas. Anything from social media, there's blogging, there's pay-per-click advertising, there's a lot of things that we need to consider, okay? And what ends up happening naturally is that most entrepreneurs are so busy working in their business with the day-to-day that they're not really working on their businesses, okay? Not working on their businesses. So the day-to-day operations, the customer handling, the supply chain, there's always going to be a fire, okay? But however, for marketing and marketing strategies to truly take effect, you kind of have to take a step back. You really have to look at it from a much bigger perspective, and to see how the rest of your efforts and how the rest of the ecosystem is really going to put in there. Okay. Before we get going, just a little bit of background about me. As Carlos mentioned, I've been in the marketing, communication, and business development space for over 15 years. I was born in Mexico City, raised in Los Angeles, now in Miami. Some would say that I only like to live in big cities, but I still enjoy the smaller places. Um, I've been bilingual and bicultural, and really have had the good fortune to work in a variety of different types of industries, leading, growing, nurturing different brands, whether it was in financial services like Chase, or education, casual dining like Smoky Bones Bar and Fire Grill, automotive like Ford, food and healthcare. Uh, and so there you round out a little bit of the different types of companies that I've helped. Uh, Big companies, small companies, Fortune 500 to startups. And I've managed budgets anywhere from $500,000 to $3 million a year. So I understand wholeheartedly, as a budding entrepreneur, or perhaps as someone who's already launched something, that you have to watch your money very, very carefully, and you want to make sure that it's a wise investment. Okay. So one of the things that I really enjoy the most, and part of the reason why I do this, is really to be at the forefront of, to speak with entrepreneurs at the different stages where they are, to really help them shape and see things slightly different, and in turn impart to them um, the all of the different mistakes and all of the different things I've seen, right? Because we can all learn from each other. Okay. Part of the reason why I'm sharing this with you is because I need you to trust me, right? I am presenting you with my credentials because I'm here to build a relationship. Okay. And one way to think about it is that you are doing or will be doing this very same thing with your consumers specifically, right? In a world where there's lots and lots of different choices, you have to stand out. So everything starts by starting that relationship, by doing it in an honest and trustworthy way, and then giving them value. So let's talk a little bit about marketing strategy. What is a marketing strategy, right? So a marketing strategy refers to a business's overall game plan for reaching prospective consumers and turning them into consumers of the product or services of that business. Okay, so there's lots of different aspects associated with it, but in the end, just think of it of this way: you need a blueprint, you need an idea, you need a game plan as to how exactly you're going to get consumers, educate them, tease them, convert them into customers, and get them to buy again. That's what marketing strategy is. So we start at the beginning with the foundations, right? So one way to do that is really to figure out, from a company perspective, what's your vision? What's your mission, right? What do you stand for? Okay. Are you is it about being ethical? Is it about being trustworthy? Is it about being reliable or accountable, right? Or anything else of that nature? The other one is really, what is that promise? What promise are you making about your product or your service? What's that one thing that people are always going to let you know, right? For many people, for a lot of the Japanese automakers, the promise that they're making is that they're making durable, reliable cars that need very little maintenance. That's their promise. So start thinking about, from your perspective, what is that promise that you're making, which dovetails really nicely into what is really unique about you, your product, and what you're selling. And this unique selling proposition, the USP, is really what's going to drive a difference in what you do and how you are seen in the consumer's mind among the sea of competition. So diving a little bit more thorough into this, okay? When it comes to marketing strategy and the marketing mix, we've always traditionally talked about the 4 Ps, and you've probably read about them in university or read an article about them. But I'm here to tell you that the 4 Ps are good, but we really should start considering the 4 Cs. So if we start with the Ps, the marketing mix is really about product, right? The goods or services that you offer, the price, and what that entails. Uh, the place or distribution, and those are the activities that make the product available to the consumer and in how many different ways that's available. And lastly, it's the promotion, right? So this involves all about the activities that communicate the product's features and benefits and persuade those customers to purchase the product. Okay. Obviously, if they don't purchase a product, then that's the whole circle hasn't finished. So those are the 4 Ps, but I'm going to suggest that we really need to start looking at them as the 4 Cs. And the 4 Cs talk about, it's about customer solutions. It's not about products. Why? Because customers want to buy value, right? They want to buy a solution to those problems. It's about customer cost and not price. So customers more and more really want to get a total sense of what is the entire cost for them to acquire, use, and dispose of that product. Okay, it's not just very, very blind in that way. It's a little bit more encompassing. Okay, this next one, the third C, is one of my favorite one. Right, it's not about place; it's about convenience. Okay, all customers, all consumers these days, they really want their products and services to be as convenient to purchase as possible. And whatever barriers or obstacles are there in the user interface, in the way that it does, or not enough information, not enough available information in the way that they're able to digest it, that only means that they're going to get distracted, or they're going to leave the product in the cart, and that's going to leave you with a interested potential customer, but not a buyer. Okay. And we're all in business to have buyers. Lastly, it's really about the last C, it's really about communication. Okay. Not promotion. So customers want a two-way communication with the companies that they're doing all sorts of things with. Okay. and it's become much more engaging. And in that way, it's about having a relationship, having a dialogue, knowing that when they're going to ask something, someone on the other end is going to reach back out to them and have that service. And that's not to say that you're not going to have promotions, but it's really about seeing that communication perspective on a much larger perspective. So the key takeaway from all of this is that the 4 C's put the customer's interests, right, the buyer, ahead. And that's ahead of the marketer's interest. So we're putting on our marketer's hat today, but we need to be sure that we're putting on the shoes and the boots of the buyer, of the customer's interest. So dovetailing into that, how do we get started to be able to do all of that? It's through market research, okay? And market research, consumer insights, and being able to catalog and to get the flow of the consumer journey is a very important first step, okay? And as many of you know, there's primary research, which is this is all in-person anecdotal information, whether that's one-on-one, whether that's focus groups. Surveys are very popular as well. The surveys can take place either on the phone or they can be online. This is a great way to gather information, okay? And to really be able to probe deeper and deeper into what that is. The other one that many of you have probably are familiar with and you've used for your business plans and in your studies is really secondary research. Secondary research is much larger information. There's studies by the McKinseys and the Boston Consulting Groups of the world and the Goldman Sachs. You know, they aggregate data, they sell it, they syndicate it. That is really information that's used much more to give you larger trends, larger aspects as to what's going on. Okay, but it's really that primary research that you start to find the nuggets. And with those nuggets, that's really where the consumer insights come in. So I'll give you 2 examples. Okay, when I was working for Univision, Univision is the leading broadcaster for Latinos, for Hispanics in the United States. TV stations, radio, cable, and all of that. They've got a great reputation. Okay, so we know that there's a very big market. The market for that in the United States is over 60 million people. Okay, most of them Spanish dominant. So for the first product there, Univision Farmacia, which this was a pharmacy discount card program, we found at the beginning that a lot of people were signing up for it, which was great, right? But they were getting the card, but they actually weren't using it. And if they didn't use it, then obviously we weren't bringing revenue into the company. So through a series of different focus groups, or what we call them store intercepts, where we actually went into pharmacies to talk to consumers, it became much more obvious that what needed is the consumer needed to understand and hear this message from someone from authority, an authority figure in the medical field. Okay, so most of us, when we think who's that authority in the medical field, we think of a doctor. Okay, but we found out that for this specific segment, it wasn't the doctor, it was the pharmacist. So it was the pharmacist at the store that they needed to hear it from, or to be able to hear from other consumers, from other people that looked like them, talked like them, that had used the product. Okay, so that's one. The second one, the other example, is for a prepaid debit card there, also that I helped launch while I was at Univision. A prepaid debit card, it's a financial instrument. There's usually all sorts of things associated with it for people that don't have a bank account or what have you. And what we ended up finding out is that when it comes to banks, there's always all that little, the fine print at the bottom, right? And so the user had ended up being very, very skeptical, very suspicious of anything, when there's just so much little writing, something's going to happen. And they just didn't want surprises. Okay. So in our communication, we were doing commercials for them, and we used some phrases that we said that the fee may vary by location. Okay. And we thought that we were using neutral language for that. But in fact, by putting that and not talking specifically about the range about what that price could be, people found that very off-putting. Okay. So without being able to have that one-on-one communication, those focus groups to really drill down into it, we wouldn't have found that out. And once we did, obviously we began to see that adoption and usage of the product was much better. Part of the reason why we also do a lot of market research and consumer insights is that you really need to figure out what the different consumer segmentation is going to be. So in this example here on slide 9, I worked for a mortgage company. And for this one, it's an idea that we needed to look at the different subsegments. So here you see that on the left-hand side, we have new home purchases, okay, or first-time home buyers. Obviously, when you're buying a home for the first time, you're scared. It's the first time. It's the most amount of money you've ever put. So you have a very different emotional connection, a nuance to it. All right. The second one is probably someone who's a little bit older and probably, you know, in a relationship or married, and they're trying to refinance. So they've kind of somewhat familiar with it, but they still need some level of hand-holding. And lastly is people that are retired or close to retirement age that were thinking about doing another type of a transaction, which is called a reverse mortgage. So in finding all of these, we knew that all of them were our customers, but each of them need to be spoken to differently. The imagery needs to be differently. The pain points are different, right? So that's why I wanted to show you that. On slide 10 here, you know, it's important to do a deep dive into really understanding your consumer, okay? And as such, a lot of the thinking revolves around identifying these pain points, these headaches. What are these problem areas, okay? And you may find that the problem areas for your primary consumer, okay, and your secondary consumer may be slightly different, and that's okay, right? Because it's in that nuance that you're going to be able to further segment that and to be able to speak to them in a way that's going to feel true and genuine, okay? Obviously, all of this is different and it changes whether you're a business to consumer company or a business to business. And know, in fact, that it's absolutely okay. It's absolutely fine to have lots of different subsets of consumers and audiences, okay? And it's important for this because depending on your product and how you launch it or what market you're in or what phase you're in, that's going to change and that's going to mature over time. At the same time, throughout all of this, in understanding your consumer and their behavior, you have to pay particular attention to a number of things, okay? Their gender. Men think differently than women, and they react to things differently, right? So you have to take that perspective in unison. There's also people from different generations have a slightly different way of understanding things or connecting to things or relating to things, right? So obviously, Generation Z versus a millennial compared to Generation X, there's difference. And it's important for you to take those differences and embrace them and use them to your advantage. The other part is obviously that has come up many, many times in all of this is their level of education. The level of education helps to see what type of language, what types of understanding you should be doing. And the last one here that obviously makes a very big difference is income, household income. So when you put all of that into, when you put all of those into perspective, into your boards to understand your different segments, you're really asking yourself, you know, are you more convenient? How do you, first of all, how do you compare to your competitors, right? So are you more convenient? Are you saving them time? Is what you're offering of better quality, right? Do you have a smoother customer experience, you know, or are you saving them money? So it's important to ask yourself these types of questions to see where along the line, where along the continuum you are. And obviously where you initially start and where you graduate up to may be different, but it's always important to take stock of that. So with all of this, it comes to our insights, and our insights tell us whether through the primary research or the secondary, you know, what it really is that market potential. And the potential that may exist today, that's a baseline, right? But we also need to look further out into the future. And for this kind of stuff, looking, you know, 2 to 3 years seems about right. Obviously, looking into 10 years, it's a fruitful philosophical endeavor, but it's not realistic, right? Things are just changing way too much. Secondly, you really want to take a look at the barriers, and you really want to see which of those barriers are institutional, can you overcome them, and which ones are in your consumer mindset. Changing consumer mindsets and behavior takes time. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but it's going to take time. And for many companies that take the time to educate them, to hold their hands, to walk them along that path, eventually we'll see some of that change make. But for example, to teach someone who hasn't done online shopping to start doing online shopping immediately from one day to the next, that's going to be very harsh. So they need to kind of do baby steps. And lastly, we live in a competitive world. There's always going to be competition for the service or the product that you have. And you need to start thinking about, how am I overcome that low brand awareness? Okay. What do I need to do to slightly stand a little bit above everything else? And eventually to have a system in place and an action plan in place so people will be able to find me. So I'll be able to be discoverable, whether it's online or offline. So it now takes us now to marketing strategy and our action plan. And there's different components to it, but I'm going to walk you through some examples so you can see how that dovetails into it. First and foremost, you have to establish a baseline, right? And as I was saying before, it all takes, you have to approach it from a strategic multi-touch point. And we need to look at that from a messaging, from a positioning perspective. That's becoming more and more key, especially with all of the differences that you have to consider. Some of you have one single product. Some of you are a brand that have a number of different types of products. So you have to take that into consideration. And at the same time, life is moving very fast. You've probably seen this chart in other places. This is what happens in an internet minute, 60 seconds. And this is data is from last year, okay? So not only are we spending a lot more time, most of the time our heads are down, okay? And in some places, we don't do as much eye contact as we used to. Personally, I think that's terrible. Some would say that we're also being less social, right? So when you think of all of this, people are spending a lot more time on YouTube, okay? People are on social media, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, and all of that. So there's lots and lots more options, right? So the question that you need to ask yourself, in a sea of all of this, that means that there's more opportunities for you to get out there, to tell people about your business, to tell them about your product. So you're gonna have to create more content, and it's gonna be consumed, right? So you almost have to build a factory or a schedule, a content marketing strategy to be able to satisfy that, okay? So ultimately, are people more engaged? Are they more distracted? It varies, it depends, right? But the last thing is, you see a little picture there of a fish, and that's a goldfish. And do you know what the attention span of a goldfish is? It's 8 seconds. 8 seconds. Every 8 seconds, they can use something else. You know what the attention span of a human being is these days? 6 seconds. 6 seconds. So there's communication overload. There's information overload. So we have to find ways for people to stop thumbing, stop, and pay attention. What we'll spend the next couple of minutes on is I wanted to share with you some strategies to market your business online. I thought that this would be useful, especially given the nature that most of you are launching technology-oriented businesses, but also this is some of the most efficient and low-cost ways to start marketing, to start putting it together. Some of these may be more in line or be more applicable to your particular business, but so consider this a menu. You don't have to do all of them. You don't have to do them all at the same time, but it's important to figure things out. Obviously, before any of this, the foundation for all of this is that you need to have an online presence. And that begins with a website and social media accounts. Which ones? We'll talk to a little bit more. The first one on our list is social media. Obviously, we can't ignore it. Lots and lots of businesses have been built just on social media. Okay, for some of you, it's intimidating. For some of you, it's not. But we all get better with practice and with trying different things. Okay. For those of you that are not so comfortable and you don't want to do it in-house, you could certainly hire someone, okay? And parting to do that is to make sure that you train them enough that they understand your brand, your voice, the authenticity that you do that. But for social media, it's all about being yourself. Post your thoughts, post your products, post anything that you think is relevant and useful to your audience, okay? A lot of times it's about posting about things in your industry. Whether it's in construction, whether it's in property management, whether it's in freight forwarding or telemedicine. There's lots of different things that you have a lot of information about, and it would be good to get it out. Obviously, the last 5 to 7 years, social media is very, very powerful marketing, and with no end in sight of that diminishing. Secondly, you can create video tutorials, okay? And one of the most effective ways to get the word out on your business is to create those video tutorials, those how-tos, right? So teach people something useful, walk them through it, hold their hands step by step. Some of you may have seen tutorials on how to cook. Some of them have done tutorials on how to learn something specific, whether it's a technical skill or something of that nature. And so, and it's an important place to be. It's an important place to be because, as you probably know, YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world behind Google. And especially the millennials, Generation Z, where do they turn to for information? A lot of it is for YouTube. So if they could find you there, you're already a step ahead of the game. Okay. The great thing about this is that I know that for some of you, initially, you're focusing on a local or regional effort. Anything on the internet, especially on YouTube, you're reaching a global audience. Okay, so it's a natural way to get lots of visibility very, very quickly. Number 3, blogging. Okay, it's great to do it. If you haven't started it, you should. Okay, most of it it tends to be much better for B2B businesses, but anybody can partake in it. And the thing about it is that you don't have to have a blog on your website. You could blog in other places. You can blog through other mediums. Okay, it's at first you need to build your credibility. You need to build your authority, if you will, right? Another way to do it is there's a lot of other places where you can lend your information, your authority on that, and then start to get followers, if you will. Okay, that tends to happen a lot when you answer questions on services such as Quora or Reddit. Okay, the other place to naturally do it, and we'll talk about it a little bit as well, is LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I know it has a little bit more presence and is more popular here in the West, in North America, but it's certainly something else for you to consider. Let's continue. Search engine optimization, SEO. Depending on your technical skills, it could be intimidating, it could be not, but you just got to keep in mind that SEO is really, really powerful, okay? And whether you do it or you hire somebody to do it, it's the type of thing that over doing it right and being patient with it is really going to bear the fruits down the road. Okay, so for those of you that are not familiar with it, search engine optimization is a way, with depending on the different content that you have and stickiness to it that you have on your website, people can find you organically through different ways. So it's about having posting content through your blog or through your social media and all of that, plus a handful of other things. The thing with this is you just got to have patience. Okay, it's not gonna happen overnight. Okay, the other one, influencers. We've all heard about influencers becoming, whether it's health, whether it's fitness, whether it's eating, whether it's inspiration or beauty people. There's always an influencer for every category, everything that you can imagine. Now, for you starting out, the important thing here is to figure out, yes, I need an influencer. It's a great way to get massive, massive visibility, but you don't need a major influencer, okay? The question is about finding the right influencer. and more specifically, trying to find someone in your niche so that you're targeting the right audience, okay? And it's not just about spreading your message, but it's about spreading it to the right consumer base. So it's not about reaching millions of people, but it's about reaching the quality of consumer, of buyers that might be. And oftentimes that happens through a micro influencer. A micro influencer is probably someone that has less than 50,000 to 10,000 or 50,000 followers. They may or may not charge, but it's a good way because also as you are both trying to build a reputation, you can both grow together as you scale. Okay. And then the other one here on this sheet is really to build a lead magnet. And by building a lead magnet and a sales funnel, that's really what I'm saying is really to build your prospect pipeline. Okay. So through the consumer research that you've done to really hone in and figure out what the problem is, what the pain points are, you really can address that solution. Okay. And how are you going to tell people about it? There's lots of ways that you can disseminate this information. Okay. So you could write an ebook. Okay. You could create a little checklist. You could create some sort of infographics about it. All right. Any of these all work. The important thing about this is to share the information, have it, but always include sales copy. Sales copy about your product, about the great things that you're doing, and obviously a way for people to get more information about you or to go on to your landing page or your website or even call a phone number to get more information. Got to make the sale, right? Rounding it out, the top 10, Facebook. Facebook has tremendous global presence, and it's really a powerful a powerful way to get it there. So whether it's through ads, through boosts, through retargeting, there's lots of things that you can do with Facebook. You can also target by a whole host of different things, whether it's interest, age, relationship status, geographic location, lots and lots of other different things here. And the thing is, you can start at a very low price, and whether that's daily or weekly, and you can test and test quickly. The thing with this is to really figure out, you know, um, is it part of your targeting? Is it your copy? Is it your promotion? And obviously to make sure that on the back end, you've taken care of installing the Facebook pixel on your site and all of that, so you can get really important and rich data to make and to be able to make better informed decisions. Number 8, like I mentioned before, you can use LinkedIn. The question is to use it the right way. Okay. And some of you have seen this already. You probably already follow people. But it's really, this is a great place. Think of LinkedIn as the greatest global platform to network. And when you're networking, you really need to talk about you and your business. So introduce it. Show them how passionate you are about your product. Okay. And the best thing about this is that you can always connect to different people. And you need to do it on a regular basis, right? The more you do it on a regular basis to not only post, but to contribute and comment, the more rich and expansive your network will grow, and you will continue to get more authority. The other great place to do is whenever you have an issue or a problem that's business related or what have you, it's a great way to connect with other like-minded entrepreneurs. It's a great go-to resources to be able to ask some simple questions. I just last week, I asked a question about a company that I wasn't so sure about to see if other people had used it and what their experience was like. I got over 7 responses within 2 days, and what they had to say was not very favorable to this company, which was quite interesting. And then the other thing, the last 2 things is email marketing. Okay, so any part of a good sales funnel is going to have an aspect of email marketing. Yes, we know that different generations pay more or pay less attention to email marketing, but at the same time, it's still a great way where you can control the message that's going out and everything associated with it. So it's important to have those systems in place on the CRM side, on the deployment side, to really see whether you're having an in-house list of existing customers or you're trying to do acquisition emails. And for acquiring customers, at least here on the West, there's lots of companies, database companies, that you can rent out that information. Very, very targeted. Um, so there's, and the cost point is pretty interesting. The important thing with email marketing that's important to do is whenever you can to always do an A/B test, right? You split your test. So either the offer or the copy or the way that it's arranged, it's slightly different, right? Because you always want to figure out what's working better. Okay, what are people responding to more? Because once you do, then you have a track record, then you have a better idea, and you'll get a lot richer information as to who's buying from you. And then from that, you can actually take that information and start building lookalike audiences to go into different areas and spectrums. And lastly, rounding it out, for a lot of other companies, being able to do hosting webinars, especially really focused webinars, are very, very timely. They're very valuable because similar to this, it allows someone to provide an opinion, an expertise, a teachable moment, if you will, and people really, really value that. The important thing about these webinars, depending on the specific industries that you're in, is really it's better to go specific and narrow than to go wide, and that's in the subject matter, in what have you. One of the better things about the webinars is also that you want to find ways to keep the audience engaged through this presentation, and so they stick through it, because probably the richer and the more interesting part of a lot of these workshops is really at the end, and that's when they can take part in the Q&A. And the best part about this, obviously, is you already have their email, you probably have their phone, so anything related to that, you've built a prospect list to be able to follow up with them. Just quickly again, some other things for us to, some other strategies to consider is to partner with allies to embrace user-generated content. This is something that more and more of the generations, the millennials, are using, and are finding it that they need to, that they consume it and it helps them when it comes to the purchase decisions. So that's something, depending on your product, that you want to take a look at. Also, be open-minded to be able to experiment with new channels and new platforms, right? So Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and all those, and WhatsApp, those are the standards. But there's probably others and more coming that you should test cautiously, slowly, but it's always good to be at the forefront. Lastly, you know, have some fun with all of this. Figure out really what your voice is, and there's a way to do it passionately, tongue-in-cheek, you know, culturally relevant, and what have you. Get your employees involved. Many of your employees, they're your best brand ambassadors. They know the product inside and out. Okay, have them do a video, have them do a trivia game. Figure out how to get them going. Also, don't forget about your existing customers. Your existing customers are walking brand ambassadors as well, okay? And they talk to a different circle of people all the time. Imagine if you started a refer a friend campaign in which they get something for introducing you to 3 or 4 of their friends. Imagine how quickly your business could scale, okay? And lastly, if you haven't seen it yet and you are consuming media and tactics in a number of different ways, we've really evolved much more into storytelling. And it's important to be able to weave that and to consider that. And knowing that a lot of times being vulnerable, being personal, humanizing your brand and being able to tell that story makes a very, very big difference in how you break through the clutter. When it comes to scaling, okay, once you've tried a whole bunch of different things, it's time to scale, okay? So obviously for whichever channel, whichever communication channel you're doing, you want to be able to do some pilots, you want to see the performance, you want to track it on a small basis, and then whichever one is working, then you scale up, okay? So this is an example for just another project that I did. Once you've tried the different ones, you need to figure out which one am I going to scale up, and in what priority am I going to do it? Whether it's digital, whether it's social media, whether it's radio, whether it's direct mail, okay? And through all of this, you're going to continue to test and refine. You're going to continue tweaking, Okay, that's the part where marketing is some part science, some part art, because you're always reiterating. Okay, and be ready to, when it's appropriate, to look forward and be ready to add the new elements. Okay, so are you going to start advertising inside of movie theaters? Are you going to do more print? Are you going to figure out how to do public relations? Public relations, most of the time, is free and can be very, very valuable when you have something that's newsworthy or when you have a unique angle. So don't discount public relations. It works very, very well. Just know that when it's time to push that lever, to turn on that button, that you need to have the infrastructure and the response ready to go in place for what could end up being a great demand. Okay. And lastly, as you get to know the seasonality, the cycles to your buying, and what happens, you're gonna see that sometimes of the year, some marketing channels work, some communication channels work better than others. And so remember to be able to turn it on and turn it off, and also be very cognizant of your operational efficiencies, to make sure that you can handle capacity. Because when you can't handle that capacity, that ends up being a bad customer experience, which is just not good after all. Just real quickly here, I wanted to show you a go-to-market action plan, where you see that a lot of things are done in phases and over time. So research is important about that, to get those consumer insights. Then you really need to do an infrastructure and an operations audit to see what's there, what's available, what are the constraints, what else do you need to get ready for it. Do your strategic pilots, whether it's in digital, whether it's online or offline, and what those components would mean, and give it the necessary time to be able to do that and to measure the KPIs, to compare apples to apples. And then, like we just said, what's that scaling up? Is it going to be on a regional level? It's going to be adding more elements, et cetera, et cetera. And through this, just again, another example on advertising strategy, being able to do and use different media vehicles to establish your KPIs. A lot of it is very important for some of you. If you're not tracking already your cost per lead or your cost per sale, you need to get there. Okay, it's very important, because once you start buying media, once you start looking at it, it'll really help you to prioritize and to figure out where your dollars should be. At the end of it, also in terms of your messaging, you want to try to balance, right? You want to try to balance your branding and awareness with a call to action, with the transactional nature of it. So depending on your product or your service, that's always a challenge. I wanted to show you here, in terms of allocating your marketing dollars. This is a sample. This is from the mortgage company. They had a healthy budget of $300,000 to be able to do some things. Depending on your aspect of it, the digital may be half, maybe slightly more than half, compared to what you're going to be doing traditional. You should always leave some money there for market research, because it's without those aspects you really can't build on anything, and have you have you do that. So this one, as you can see, the biggest, the bulk of it was really, digital was the largest part, but everything else kind of rounded it with it. And through all of this, you want to make sure that your messaging is consistent, it's integrated. So with that, just some really quick concluding thoughts. As I mentioned, marketing, part of it is science, part of it is art. There's different ways to do it. There's always something to learn. There's always something new to learn, but a lot of it is do it, tweak it, test it, modify it, repeat, and do it all over again. So with that, thanks for your time. And Carlos, I think we have some time for some questions.
Yes, we do. Thank you, Sergio. That was great. The floor is open for questions. So we have about maybe 9 minutes. So if you have any questions, you can type them into the thread. First one that came in is if we could share the presentation with us. So we'll be posting it to the Peak platform for sure. So
Absolutely.
definitely one way to be able to access the content thereafter. Isulu has a question, so if you'd like to type that into the box, I see that a hand was raised. Sergio will be glad to take the question.
Okay, let's see. Let me just open this up. Okay.
Might be typing it out. I think one of the things, like that comes up, in this process is like really like the importance of the segmentation. And I know that that's something that really for the earlier stage entrepreneurs is just supremely relevant for needing to kick off early. If you know how to like make that message stick and make it actually very pertinent to them, it's a huge, huge, huge opportunity to just accelerate the process to getting closer to taking a lead to a sale. Question here comes over. It says the last part reminded me of design thinking. I was wondering if it's the same approach.
I think it's philosophically speaking, it's the same type of it. Obviously, there's going to be some nuances with it. But yes, there's a lot of elements of design thinking that are very relevant to this, and there's a lot of them from marketing strategy. So I would say that they do work hand in hand. And the important thing there is to find a balance, to not tip over one way more into the other, to always keep the customer in mind.
Question comes in and says, web names are usually in like English or Latin here. Our market is Russian speaking. Does brand name or should it relate to the idea of our product? And then the follow-up statement was that we have a brand naming issue.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's someone that comes up very often because obviously right now where your services are available may be Russian only, but many of you have aspirations to be able to grow this out of the region and to be relevant in that. Um, in an ideal world, you don't rebrand that often and you don't change your names because with every action that you do, with every advertisement that you do, you're building awareness, you're building equity, people are getting to know you. So in naming exercises, whenever possible, what you want to do is, yes, you do want to include what you do kind of in the name of what you're doing. Okay, that's always very, very helpful. If it could be in a international, global word, then it makes all the sense in the world. I know that oftentimes that can't be the case, but what we are seeing is that sometimes the word in non-Latin or English brand name refers to one specific aspect, and then there's a deviation on the other one for the global sense. But I'll tell you this, okay? Uber. Uber is really a German word that was taken by an American company that now they use Uber all the time, right? So sometimes it's about finding a short, pronounceable word that is not offensive in the majority of uh, that's not offensive to the majority of your markets is another way to consider it. And I'll give you a really quick example. In the 1970s, Chevrolet introduced a new car in North America. It was called Nova, okay? They did gangbuster numbers in the United States and in Canada. When they got to Mexico and to Latin America, it just wasn't working, okay? Why? Because in Spanish, Nova means it doesn't go. So people were like, why would I buy a car that wouldn't take me somewhere? So that's a quick one. I hope that was helpful. And Sanjar, I know that we started the discussion on that late yesterday, and we can continue with it. I know that Anar also spoke with, yes, what is this pandemic and what is the coronavirus? How is that going to impact the toolbox? Yes, it's going to impact all sorts of different aspects of our life. And I think that's what's going to happen depending on the region. There's going to be a faster adoption and a faster migration to contactless type of situations. So obviously we're doing this on video. Many of you are very familiar with Zoom and with all those meetings. A lot of people are rediscovering it for the first time, and it's time to find different ways to congregate virtually and to have those conversations, right? So the trick or the nuance to coronavirus and to what's going on is that the gravity or the seriousness of it is in different degrees depending on the region where you are. Okay, I think if I remember correctly, in Bishkek, this is day 2 or day 3 of the 30-day quarantine. Okay, some countries are being more stricter than others. I know that, for example, in the United States, we're 2 to 2.5 weeks behind what happened in Italy. And so what you want to consider through all of this is you want to be authentic and compassionate in what you're saying during this time, but you can't come off as being uh, too pushy or advantageous or feeling like you're really not uh, sensitive to the stress, to the fear, to the confusion of what's going on. So what I'm seeing a lot of companies do in the time of this is to listen more, to be emphatic, if you will, to show empathy, but they're being very careful as to into how they push their sales messages, how they push that communication. Some of the best things that I've seen is really something that embraces inspirational aspects, that really talks about us and about we instead of about me. And so it's a great question and something that will continue to evolve. Certainly, it's the first pandemic that I'm living through, as I'm sure many of you are as well. And it's almost the type of thing where you have to do a check-in every couple of days because the situation is so fluid. Any other questions? Yes, Ari, absolutely. You have my email address there on the last page, sergio@venturehive.com. I'm only 10 hours behind you, or more, or less, depending on where you are. Feel free to write me an email, and I'll be happy to connect with you, of course.
We keep the trains running on time here too, and I think it's a perfect way to steer away from the conversation to next steps. I mean, I think this is one of those places again where kind of closing everything out, looking at what to do next for the entrepreneurs that are in the audience. Some of our accelerator participants are here, and that's great. Welcome. For those of you that this is your first time interacting with Peak, these are weekly sessions that we offer to the community free of charge. And seeing as how at the moment Peak Bishkek has gone virtual, our programming doesn't stop, and I think we still run uninterrupted as a result, and keep up with some of the social media channels and outreach that Peak Bishkek is doing, because you're still able to tune in as you have today and join in on that call. So we're looking forward to continuing to supporting everybody from a distance. Remember to take care of your families and yourselves during this time. Keep listening in for more updates, not only from us, but from local authorities as it relates to, how things are evolving over time. And we're looking forward to supporting everybody throughout this and beyond. We are, full steam ahead with the work that we're doing. And definitely, you know, we're here to support the community of not only Bishkek entrepreneurs, but Kyrgyz entrepreneurs and those interested in jumping into the activity. So yeah, on behalf of not only Peak, but Venture Hive, and I think a lot of just the rest of the partners, Sergio, thank you very much for your time. This was hugely relevant, and for everybody that participated in with questions as well, really, really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. You guys were great. Stay safe, and we look forward to the next session with everyone. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, Sergio. Thanks to the team that's on here. Have a great Friday and weekend. See the rest of you guys in pitch practice. Thanks.
Thank you, Sergio. Thank you, Carlos.